Bob Martin is our speaker today, um, and Bob is a member. We all know Bob. He's spoken to us twice on the whole topic of COVID, and we would like to think that after 5 years of this crap that we would be done with it, and there would be no news from Bob. But apparently, he's got news, so we'll hear about that in a second. If anybody's really interested in this topic, Bob has well over 20,000 pages of research online, and uh, he's really gotten to be quite an expert on the COVID. But his technical career was not a preamble for what he's going to be talking about today. He was a highly successful scientist at Bell Labs. Think about Unix and C++, and he retired as their chief technology officer. And like all Bell Labs employees, he came with a strong technical background um, from Brown and then MIT. And I could use all of his time talking about him, but I'm not going to do that. So let's hear about COVID. Bob, good to see you, and um, take it away.
Um, well, Mitch, as always, thank you very much. Let me start a screen share. I started this as something to do during lockdown, and that was just a really weird hobby. A little bit of background. This is the virus. It has four structural proteins. These are the things you always see in the picture. The spike, the one we've heard most about, the basis of the vaccines and most of the therapeutics, or many of them. Then the N protein, that's in the center and it's wrapping the viral uh, uh, RNA up. It's the basis of the rapid antigen test. The M and the E just wrap things up and all damage organs directly. At the top is the layout of all the proteins. I'm not going to go through it, but just, there are 29 of them. The non-structural proteins, of which there are 25, there's some really nasty ones, particularly NSP1, which disables our innate immunity and lets the sucker take off. They disrupt our protein building, they damage our organs. Then most importantly, they facilitate the hyperinflammation causing cytokine storm. All are targets of major therapeutics, particularly Mpro for Paxlovid and RDRP or NSP5 for a couple others. You can see where each of these targets are. The atomic structure is astoundingly well understood. Look at the numbers. It's really small, 13 trillion would fit in a grain of salt. 1 to 30 trillion end up in our bodies. So about 2 to 3 grains of salt. However, if you took all the viral particles and all the people who were infected by COVID, it would weigh about 100 to 150 elephants. 100 million particles are carried in a sneeze, 13 feet. It only takes 10 to 100 to get infected. And you can see how deadly it is. So this little thing is just astounding. Of course, the big question is, where did it come from? Lots of theories. One of them is the Chinese were working on a virus from an infection in a mine in 2012. And they did something called gain of function research. That's to make the virus more nasty. It escaped and then it spread, causing two lineages. The two lineages are a bit of a clue that this was not a gain of function. Another theory is that a bat infected some animal. It then went into the lab for research and escaped, or it directly infected somebody with the first case in China that was reported in December. There's another interesting one in that it was discovered in Italy in September of 2019, way before China. And it is possible it started someplace else, was weak, made its way into China. Now, finding where it came from is hard. There are lots of bat species. 22% of all named mammal species. It's really hard, going in caves and sampling a bat's nose or anus is not exactly what Mitch would prefer as compared to vacation in North Carolina. It takes a long time to find a virus source you see here, and not only, and some haven't been found. A genetic analysis strongly implies it was not created in the lab. And that analysis is people carefully looked at that long viral sequence that I described earlier. And there were about 1,000 changes from the 2012 virus to the SARS-CoV-2 virus scattered throughout the genome. Based on a video not just taken inside a cave in Botswana, where I was a couple of weeks ago, not the cave, but Botswana, a clue has emerged how this might have happened. Animals eat the tasty virus-laden bat feces. So this is how it might have spread. Now, part of the reason I call this thing the mouse that roared is you look at the spreading characteristics. On the left is the case fatality rate. This is the percent of people who die. And across the bottom is the reproduction rate called R naught. And it's the number of people in a native environment who get infected by one person. And you see COVID way, way down at the bottom left. So it's a mild virus that doesn't spread very quickly. Also, some of the other viruses have person-to-person spread only if a person is symptomatic. That makes it easy to stop. And some don't have person-to-person spread. Now, this thing spread very, very quickly. Took 3 months to cover the world as compared to the Spanish flu, 18 months, which could happen only by troop ship travel, great advantage of air travel. As of June 2024, COVID had killed 2% of the world's population, as compared to the 1918 Spanish flu, 3 to 6%. You can read the other two. So it really is a mild virus, but as we know, it's caused havoc. Now, if only the virus hadn't mutated, the pandemic would have been long over. It doesn't mutate that quickly, but there have been lots of variants, 44,000 estimated. Spike protein has mutated basically every place. And, excuse me, the average number of people infected is called R naught, as I mentioned. The time between subsequent infective is called the serial interval. I get infected, how long is it before I can infect somebody else? That's the serial interval. And so the new cases on day N is R naught to N divided by the serial interval. If fully unconstrained, Omicron would have infected the world, roughly the world, on the 30th day. And what has happened as the variants have come out, the serial interval has gotten shorter and the ability to infect has gotten higher. So it spreads much more quickly. We've really been lucky. If Delta severity had hung around, many more people would have died. Omicron and its successor, as you will see, are much less severe. Starting with Delta, SARS-CoV-2 was here to stay. Notice 75% of the flu cases are caused by descendants of the Spanish flu. Some viruses can be eradicated. Polio, measles, mumps, rubella, smallpox can be eradicated because they're not carried by animals. However, SARS-CoV-2 never can be eradicated because it's been found in many animals, with the white-tailed deer being the most famous, with about a third of ours having been infected. To eliminate, not eradicate, you have to reach something called herd immunity. And if the vaccine is 100% effective, this is the percent of people who have to be infected. Have to be vaccinated. And with the US vaccination rates of about 70%, once Delta was here, could not be eliminated. Let's talk a little bit about the disease. I've covered this before, so a quick review. Across the top, there's a stage called incubation. That's before you become symptomatic. And then infectious can really start on about day 3. At about day 10, you're not infectious, but you'll still test positive. And you see the disease progression across the bottom. Death occurs in about day 11 to day 23. His big problem is the super flu caused by this cytokine storm, which causes the hyper inflammation and ARDS, acute respiratory distress symptom, which happen in many diseases. Many organs fail. So this is not a single hit. And many biochemical processes change. Hundreds of them. This thing really disrupts the body. Comorbidities make things worse, lots of them, as you can see from this chart. These are the big hitters. Frailty is number 1, then age, obesity, active chemotherapy, untreated type 2 diabetes. If you're diabetic, be sure to get it treated, and bad behaviors. I'll get to the Republicans later. Therapeutic. No respiratory disease has ever been cured. Once you're hospitalized, you're in trouble. Thus, early therapeutic use is crucial. 4,800 therapeutic trials. However, none of those trials led to an approved therapeutic. They were all discovered ahead of time. Basically, what you're trying to do as the virus attacks is stop it at the gate. You want to use the antivirals to stop it. The antivirals are disrupted by the variants, so some sneak through. Part of the reason is no new therapeutic has been approved is the good enough problem. Full clinical trials cost $100 million and 90% fail. And if you have something like Paxlovid, why bother? Mice, oh, those poor mice. they were genetically modified a couple of times. One, to have the ACE2 receptor that allows the virus to enter. And then there was another one on the thing that cleaves it. And anything you could imagine to a mouse was done. The variants, back to the variants, basically what happens is when a new variant comes out, its neutralization capability against previous ones' neutralization capabilities against it are greatly diminished. Each of these squares is a twofold reduction. So beta, just because you had beta, its ability to neutralize Omicron was a factor of 10 less than its ability to neutralize itself. Now, these are the therapeutics changing roles in disease progression. The next few charts are from a paper that just got published today of mine on therapeutics. And they go through several steps. Step one, most important, prevent it. Step two, the antivirals suppress its replication. Then try to suppress the hyperinflammation, and finally, lung damage. Vaccines are astoundingly good. Record development time, amazing effectiveness, far better than the flu. They're still quite effective. Not as effective for the for the immunocompromised. And most diseases don't have vaccines, so we were really lucky. Every now and then you'll see concerns on side effects, particularly by that idiot Kennedy. It's important to note they're all less than COVID infection. Details matter. Just one little change in the lipid coatings has made Moderna more effective in every issue. They always wane less, has fewer side effects. Boosters are still very, very important. You want to keep up with the variants, and for some reason, nobody understands why vaccine effectiveness wanes. And here you see the waning over time, the curves going down, and you see that each higher chart represents a more recent booster, or the best protection is infection plus a booster. Okay, the reason we need the updated shots, a bit, hammering on the drum a bit, is from another paper of mine, is we got lots of variants, running out of the Greek alphabet. And the basis of the fall 2023 upper left and spring 24 boosters was XBB.1.5. Unfortunately, by the time it came out, different variants were present. And therefore, the XBB.1.5 vaccine wasn't particularly effective. Okay, so research is taking place on the next vaccines. It was a part of the U.S. Next Gen program, which of course was cut by Trump. Characteristics are well known. The present vaccines only protect the lower part of the body. You want to protect the upper. That's why infection is useful. It also protects the upper and gets T cells. You want multiple targets, and you want them to be mutation resistant targets, and you want to add a chemical called an adjuvant, which boosts its strength. Now, the holy grail is to do it in 100 days, because if you do, and you see the evolution of the trials, which take a long time, and deployment takes a long time, if you can do it in 100 days and roll it out quickly, you basically can avoid lockdowns and school closures. Requires long-term research. People are working on it. I think it requires anticipatory development, guessing the viral family, and then doing the phase 3 trial now. So all you need is a booster, which can be trialed in a few weeks. This is a therapeutic cascade, same chart from below. This is all the approved therapeutics. To prevent it, vaccines and one monoclonal antibody, which has become less effective with time. I've added one of my favorites, which is not approved, but this nose spray. We carry it all the time. Then to replace the viral replication, 4 choices: Paxlovid best, monoclonal antibodies are no longer effective. Hyperinflammation, a variety of drugs, all associated with asthma. And then oxygen damage, a couple of things. But when you're down there, they help, but not a lot. Lots of studies, no new drugs. You can see where the approved ones are. These are all the studies. The viral impacts on the therapeutics, it wiped out all the monoclonal antibodies. Paxlovid and Molnupiravir are still effective. You worry about Paxlovid because there is a known mutation that could disrupt it. It's called the E166V mutation. It's the most effective. It's in a pill. You gotta watch the drug interactions, moderate side effects. The next one, also a pill, no drug interaction, some side effects, can damage DNA, so not to be used for pregnant women or young men. The last one is intravenous, not as effective, has some drug interactions, rare side effects. Okay, this chart is behind my opening comment. These are the deaths from COVID. They're way less. Way less than automobile deaths, less than the flu last year. And they're because population level immunity, infections and vaccinations, great therapeutics, weaker variants, better healthcare. Early on the hospitals were overrun. Is something called harvesting. That's the Boris plan. Let the old people die. The weak and old did die. And the virus has become less severe. Doesn't happen all the time. These guys have either not had the severity drop or have had it recently increased. So we've been lucky. Okay, so how did it spread? It's behavior, as Lucy says. We had the highest death rate amongst developed countries. If we'd behaved as well as the top 5 developed countries, COVID would have been like a bad flu. States' death rates, as you'll see, different greatly, and it was leadership. People said it didn't exist. You don't need to change your behavior. Behavior choices were complex and really weird. You can be safe, vaccines, N95 masks. N95 masks stop the spread twice as much as vaccines. Avoid crowded indoor spaces, use that spray. We use it before and after any potential exposing event. Test, particularly to avoid household spread, which is where 40% of the spread happens. Disinfectants, medical grade air purifiers, HEPA 14, UV lights in your HVAC wipe out all viruses. And as an example, the Santa Barbara Elementary School post-lockdowns used these techniques, and they had no COVID cases from school attendance. So it really can be avoided. Of course, the impacts, man, have we been virtualized like today. The economic dislocations were surprisingly short. The cities have recovered. Unemployment has recovered. Debt and inflation, particularly debt, are hanging over. What's surprising is the suicide attempts dropped. I wouldn't have guessed that. Home team soccer veils prevalence changed because they didn't have the home team fans saying they're going to lynch the referee. 20% of US people got a pandemic puppy. The return rates were the same as before, though interestingly, they didn't change loneliness. Scary is violence. Violence took off. To give you an idea how powerful the non-pharmaceutical interventions are, and this is from another paper that's been accepted, but not published yet, is these non-pharmaceutical interventions work. To put it in perspective, these were the early death rates. Old folks, 30% died. That was the harvesting I mentioned. If there'd been no change in behavior with the data I already covered, 7 million people in the US would have died from COVID in 2020 as compared to 240,000. Picking and wearing the right mask is a big deal. You see in the upper left-hand corner, if you have an N95 with a nose clip, call that a protection of 1. If you use a surgical mask with a nose clip, it's 74 times less effective. Surgical masks are basically useless now, even with a nose clip. Bizarrely, people wear seatbelts, but not masks. Yeah, when we go in stores now, we essentially are the only people wearing a mask. There were huge political differences in the applications of the non-pharmaceutical interventions. You see 4 bars, and you see on the bar lower the number of Republican states that had none of that, then the Republican average of how long they had them, and then the Democratic average. So huge differences. The consequence is more Republicans die. If you look at the death rate by the difference of the Biden-Trump March vote, 2020 vote, these are the difference in the death rates. With the same death rates, Trump would have beat Biden in Georgia and Arizona, but not Pennsylvania. They weren't magic. The reduced cases, long COVID cases. However, learning loss, mental illness, more deaths of despair, postponed medical care, reduced vaccination rates, with the runs on the right being real-time bombs. Look at learning loss. And there have been subsequent studies it's still down. Homeschooling by Zoom just did not work. The Republicans had less learning loss because they did less homeschooling. So there was an advantage, the right-hand side of the chart of not following the NPIs. Lots of pandemic medical impacts. These are the reductions in surgery. Look at these huge reductions in surgery, lower left, doing the lockdowns. These are time bombs. And that has showed up with increased cancer rates everywhere. Okay, long COVID. These charts are the basis of a next and last paper I'm going to write about COVID. First, it has lasting impact. It is just astounding the number of parts of the body it attacks. Even today, there was a new paper on 2 new neurological impacts. There's no diagnostic test. You ask questions. Have you felt fatigued in the last 2 weeks? Mitch, you felt fatigued? I have. How about brain fog? Well, I've demonstrated that. There's huge ranges, as you'll see more in the next chart, of prevalence. Interesting, many diseases have post-recovery symptoms. There was a paper today in the National Academy of Sciences talking about that. It just happens. The virus beats up your body. No, I'm sorry, chart before the prevalence. Now, people do improve slowly with time. Here you see various symptoms, either hospitalized or non-hospitalized, prevalence versus month since infection. 18 months, and it's still pretty prevalent. Now, the typical body healing time is 6 weeks to 6 months for non-psychiatric illness. If you had a heart attack or even heart surgery, 6 months. We had a very good friend's granddaughter, college age, healthy, strong, no comorbidities. It took 2 years for her to recover. And 1% to 2% in the US are disabled with no diagnostic test, complicates Social Security disability, who won't tell you how many people are disabled because of long COVID. As I mentioned, the prevalence is a mystery. These are early studies with the y-axis being prevalence and the x-axis being time frame, and they're all over the place. Nobody knows. 7%, as I mentioned, seems to be a good guess. Now, the things you can do to reduce the chances. The best is vaccination. But even that vaccination is unknown. Or the impact is unknown. These are the number of papers in the Mouse That Roared that address the impact of vaccination on reducing long COVID. Looks like about 50%, but you can see it's all over the place. Paxlovid, take it early, factor of 2. Lead a healthy life. Most important, exercise. Stay thin, avoid reinfection. Long COVID is very, very different than COVID. You can see when the first papers came out, I'm sorry, that JAMA one was in November. One's a disease, one is a consequence, one is contagious, one isn't. One is, you can figure it out by a test. See the length of illness. Interestingly, females have more of it than males. Vaccine helps one. Therapeutics can help avoid damage. All you do is repair it, and approved FDA drugs, some and several. Long COVID has received much less research attention than COVID. You see the FDA clinical trials, mouse at Roard papers, PubMed papers. It's just different. Well, what if you get it? What do you do? Most importantly, go to a long COVID clinic. Your local practitioner probably doesn't know enough. There are 400 in the US. Go to a major hospital like Johns Hopkins. 43 of the top US top hospitals have long COVID clinics. There are other resources. Assemble your medical history, particularly your COVID history. Assess root causes. There are tests for each of these. And you then treat symptoms. You don't treat the disease. I did a paper analysis, 269 papers, 168 treatments. This shows the overall analysis. There are lots on root cause, but there are no trials of any size of it, which is kind of interesting. Broad treatments, the best are exercise and oxygenation, more on that. They help everything. And as you'll see in the net charts, there are a couple of things you really should consider doing. Then they're disease specific. Not much can be done there. 168 treatments, no silver bullets, some what I call bronze BBs. At least one paper with a 300-person trial. The big deal is exercise and oxygenation. That is what makes the difference. Here are some drugs. The first two make a difference. Interestingly, antidepressants make a huge difference and actually cured a friend of mine of it. Nutrition helps a little. These are papers in the 100 to 200 person trial. 300 is a phase 3 trial, 100 phase 2. Weight loss, again, stay healthy. None in root causes. At least one paper with a 1 to 199. These are ones to watch. I wouldn't look at them. These are the procedures and the drugs. And these are the papers with no people in trials. These are small. I'm not going to go through it. It's more if anybody's interested in it. You can see the impacts. Some are broad, some are symptom specific. Okay, preparing for the next pandemic. Yep, this is going to be one. We're lucky that the avian flu appears to not going to be a pandemic. Right? CDC has dropped it off its big list. It's still watching it, but it's dropped it. What do we need to do? Watch for it, build up stockpiles that we didn't have for the COVID one, scale up our manufacturers so we're relying on others, improve the information infrastructure, and most importantly, work on vaccines. This is a common drumbeat. If you look what's on the left, everybody has said, this is what you need to do. Wishing on the star, educate the leaders on a proper response. Diminish the political warfare, educate the population on behavior, and improve the health infrastructure. Now, if you haven't had enough, on COVID, you can go to the COVID park in Vietnam. You can have a COVID vacation. It is really bizarre. There are videos of it on the web. Okay, if there are any questions.
Jan Lindhorst, unmute yourself.
Thanks, Bob, for a very informative presentation. My wife has been diagnosed by 4 different doctors with long COVID, including the doctors that Overlook Hospital long-term COVID study. The 3 things that you indicated that might be possible are exercise, and then you listed some drugs, and then nutrition. They obviously support as much exercise as possible and good nutrition, which we're working on.
Good.
But they don't prescribe any drugs. None of the 4. They said you will get over it in time, but there is nothing to give you in terms of a drug. In fact, she was getting better. We're on a 3-year anniversary of long COVID, but the first 2 years she had made good progress, and we caught COVID again, and she had to go back to 0.
Right.
In the last year, she's gotten to the point where she can walk with a little assistance, but other than wait it out and keep working on the exercise and the nutrition, we don't know what to do except stay away from getting COVID again, which I don't know how you do.
Okay.
What would you do if it was your wife?
Sure. First, Ken, I'm sorry your wife's going through it. It's horrible. We have other friends who've had it, and it's grim. First, I would go to a major long COVID clinic. I'd consider NYU. They have a very good one, or Johns Hopkins. Ken, I don't know where you live. And I wouldn't do anything without talking to a doctor, but I would ask the doctor about oxygenation. And the reason that works is it attacks the root causes, inflammation. Very importantly, you have a little thing in your cell called a mitochondria that produces oxygen. It gets creamed by COVID, so it helps rebuild it. I would strongly consider an antidepressant. As I said, that finished the recovery of a friend of mine who was having a terrible case. The kind is an SSRI, but go to a long COVID clinic. And I would be happy at any time to have a longer conversation with you about it and send you a draft paper that provides more details if you would find that of use.
Mark Edelman.
Yes, sorry, my video is not working. I have a general question. We all know that the vaccines are quite effective. And we also know that if enough people get vaccinated, there's a degree of herd immunity. Can you give us a perspective on the relative importance of those 2 factors? So, for example, I'm fully vaccinated.
Great.
But I want to go to places where there's a crowd of people. How important is the vaccination of other people to me?
Okay, break it into pieces. Great question. There are several kinds of protection that a vaccine provides. It can protect you against infection. It can protect you against severe infection, and it can protect you from spreading it. These vaccines are not good at protecting you from spreading it, if for no other reason than the lack of protection in the upper respiratory system. So even if other people are vaccinated, they can spread it to you. Now, you going to, for example, a crowded place is that teeter-totter balance. Do you have low comorbidities? Are you young? Do you say, well, if I get infected, it's going to be a nuisance, but what the heck? I'll take the risk because I want to go to the great indoor restaurant. My wife and I haven't been to a crowded indoor restaurant in 5 years, and we don't plan to go. We've gone to indoor restaurants, for example, on an Antarctica cruise. We went early and we sat in the corner. But there we took a air purifier for our room. So, we're still very, very cautious. If you go, I strongly recommend you use that nasal spray I mentioned before and after. It reduces the chance of severe COVID by a factor of 8.5.
Oh,
Yeah, thanks for a wonderful talk, Bob. I have my copy of your slides because there's so much information in there that I want to digest.
Oh, thanks.
But I have two questions about long COVID. I'll ask them both and then mute. One is about the mechanism of long COVID, and maybe the answer is buried in your slides, and I'll see it later. But you could say. Is it your belief that long COVID is caused by a reservoir of COVID virus in the body that just is hard to find and get rid of? Or is it entirely caused by damage to the body that was done while the person had the virus? And the second question is, why do some people get long COVID and others not? And so is it just random, the luck of the draw? I'm a statistician, so I understand that. Or is it likely that certain people are predisposed genetically or otherwise to catch long COVID? Thanks.
Sure. On question one, yes. There are several what are called root causes. Inflammation, number one. Another one is persistent viral infection, the one you mentioned. And so that's part of it, but it's pretty low on the list. The big ones are just the direct damage to the body. Very good friend of mine, a 93-year-old professor at Brown University, who just got COVID again, made the best metaphor, which is getting long COVID is like being hit by a truck. And there are like 280 some odd symptoms reported. Every organ, every biological process gets disrupted. This one little protein, NSP1, just wreaks havoc. Now, to your second question, there are a long list of comorbidities of why some people get COVID and not. Not being vaccinated, being heavy, being a woman, being under active chemotherapy, a list of about 50 of them. But there's no guaranteed test. You can't go down the list and say, Well, I have none of those, so I'm not going to get it. Your odds are lower, but it's not guaranteed.
Dave DeLong,
Uh, Hi, Bob. Thanks for the very informative presentation. I've had COVID 3 times now, and I'm feeling the symptoms mildly of long COVID recently. But the question is, does the number of times you have COVID impact the potential for long COVID?
Yes. Sorry, the short answer, yes.
And the other question is, the
And
first
and by the way, the kind of simple rationale is each time you get it, you get more and more damage to the party. So, if you get hit by one big truck, you get it. Or if you hit by 3 little trucks, you get it.
And the second question is, the first case, I had the intravenous, either remdesivir or the one that ends in lob, and it seemed like it was very experimental. Has that been further vetted, and are there some permanent side effects from
Um,
those?
yeah, the side effects from remdesivir, there's some, but they're less. And if you had them from your first shot, from your first case, I'm sorry, it's likely they would have occurred early, not now. So most likely what you're feeling now with all the uncertainties of this damn impact is your body's just getting beat up.
Thank you.
And by the way, you're getting older, so your comorbidity is sorry. We just came back
Joe
from
Tittle,
sorry, just one quick one. We just came back from our second trip to Africa in the last couple of years. And the number of people who came up to us with this sincere comment, oh, you all are our role models. We hope we can travel when we're your age.
Okay, I'm next, Bob. A wonderful presentation. I
Thank
wanted
you.
to talk about preparing for the next pandemic. This group, it's obvious, this group is a high-risk group. So we really need to be on this one. And I got to say, I'm rather pessimistic that if we have another pandemic, the current leadership, RFJ Jr., will be on the ball. So if that occurs, what do I do? I stay home and do DoorDash, or what's your prediction?
Well, sadly, I really agree with you. I think it's frightening. The lack of learning and, in my view, the scientific ignorance. So, first thing we hope for is it doesn't happen in the next 3.5 years. For a whole series of reasons. And if it does, DoorDash it is.
Rich Lander,
Yeah, Rich.
Okay, great. I have questions about gain of function. Why would we do gain of function in general? And why specifically would Fauci sponsor gain of function in Wuhan?
Second question first, then the first question. You need to sponsor the gain of function where they're doing the research on the virus. So China was doing the research on SARS, Vietnam on dengue, the Congo, I think, on Ebola. So you got to pick it where it is. The reason you do it is controversial. Being done until very recently in many US labs, it was just cut off. And the people doing the research, of course, squealed like stuck pigs. And they correctly observed the reason you want to do it is the anticipatory development of therapeutics and vaccines. You say, gosh, if that happens, we're in trouble, but we can prepare against it by doing this, this, and that. But it is controversial.
Was the risk worth the reward?
I'm sorry.
So was the risk worth the reward?
Well, I don't believe, in the scientific community doesn't believe that the gain of function had any impact on the spread of the virus. Did China really understand that virus when it spread? The key papers came out within a month from China. So maybe it was. Hard to say.
Thank you.
Mike Katz.
Hi, Bob, thank you for a great presentation. It's very thorough, very interesting. My question is, I last had a COVID booster in August of last year. Should I be getting another one at this time or in the near future?
Yes, it's good to get them roughly every 6 months. It appears the fall booster is going to be the same as the one you had. That's unusual because the variants that are the descendant, that are present now are descendants of the variant for your last booster, but they wane. Their strength diminishes over time. Let's see, it is July now. You have a choice. You could run down to the drugstore and get it, or you could wait until September, October and get it for the expected winter surge. It will surge. News reported today it's gone up in San Francisco. But yeah, definitely get it. Same arm, about 1 PM. Moderna. Now the bad news, no booze night before and day of.
Bob
Thank you.
Ferguson.
Oh, and by the way, one other reason that should give you solace on getting it, there's a recent paper on something called original antigenic sin. What a great phrase, or imprinting. And the question was, did old folks who got lots of boosters have diminishing impact from recent boosters? And the answer was no, they worked.
Bob, thank you very much. I have two quick questions. First, if you were going to travel to Europe, if you had to travel to Europe, would you go by plane or by ship?
Okay. Well, let's see. We just went to Africa twice. We went to Patagonia and we went to Antarctica, and we're going to Indonesia. In all cases, by plane. I'll get to your Europe question a bit. Now, going by plane, we do 3 things most people don't do. We're fortunate we can afford business class. So we can get on first and get off first. Your most dangerous exposure is in the walkway because they're not ventilated. So if you get on last, all the COVID wackadoodles have the viral particles. Okay. Then we wear our N95 masks the whole trip. Secondly, we wear goggles while people are boarding. We let them get by us. And finally, we use this, I'm a stuck record, this spray. Right, we get on, we spray. When everybody gets past, we spray. Right before we get off, we spray. When we get off, we spray. Ships, we did go on a ship to Antarctica. My wife gets violently seasick. And we were by far the oldest people on the ship. Go when you're young, it's a tough trip. But we did the same old stuff. We typically ate in a room. We had our N95 masks or spray. I brought a air purifier with us, and we were fine.
Where do you get the nasal spray?
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, I just say 5% iodine nasal spray.
And my last question, my second question is I always thought, or I had thought, that the definition of the word vaccine meant that you were inoculated against the disease. That is, if you were vaccinated against smallpox, you're not getting smallpox. But that doesn't seem to be the case with these other vaccines that we're talking about today. Was my understanding always wrong?
I think so. Because even with smallpox, it's not 100%. And it does wane a little bit with time.
How does a smallpox vaccine percentage-wise compare with the COVID vaccines today percentage-wise?
Smallpox, much higher.
Much higher.
Much higher protection. Much
Nearly
higher.
100%.
Nearly 100%. Doesn't mutate. It's not in animals. It's all this dumb luck or lack.
What does the word inoculation mean?
Oh boy, I'd have to look it up. I just think it means you're getting a shot, which might have some effect.
Okay, thank you.
I think,
Mitch,
Yeah. Hey, Bob, like everybody else said, great talk. Towards the beginning of your talk, the message I got was that we actually got pretty darn lucky that we didn't have 7 million deaths or something like that. And what's wrong with our public health system that that message is not getting out there to the public? That I mean, first of all, we will have another pandemic,
right.
Whether it's a round virus with little spiky proteins off the edge of it, or some other kind of a virus, or something. We will have another pandemic, and the question is when. And the issue is, what can we do to be more prepared? And you rattled off a whole bunch of things, more stockpiles and so forth. But the messaging, I think this is just me projecting on America, or the world, is that, well, we dodged that bullet. Let's get on with life and worry about whatever we worry about, the Yankees or the president or whatever. So how come we're not messaging this more to say, we've got to keep doing what we're doing for COVID, but more importantly, we got to be prepared for the next one. Why is that messaging not working?
Mitch, I think you are aware of the Milgram experiment, but let me go over it quickly for others, just in case not. A Yale psychologist, might have been a psychiatrist, named Milgram, ran an experiment that changed how experiments could be done. The experiment was really simple. First, a guy in a white coat outside a very impressive medical clinic asked two passersby if they would participate in the experiment. The experiment was going to be on the impact of pain on learning. They had one guy sit down, wired him up to a shock machine. He actually worked for the clinic. The second person was the guinea pig. Said to the guinea pig, you read these 20 pairs of words. Birdhouse, green. Mitch, clever. You know, to the guy getting the shock. And then, one word at a time, go through the list. If the guy doesn't remember the word, shock him and increase the strength of the shock. So the guy, not as clever as Mitch, messes up, gets shocked. And this continues, and the gauge of the shock gets up to severe and death. Before it gets to that, the guy sitting there says, hey, I got a heart problem. The guy in the white coat says, you agreed, we must continue. 80%, 75, 80% of the people continued shocking while the guy was passed out. It didn't matter whether it was in a clinic or a dump or whether it was ministers or engineers, everybody did it. The power of the leader is unbelievable. So until we have leaders who believe what you believe, Mitch, and what I believe, it will not change. And that a cheery summary.
EJ?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this great presentation. This was very instructive. If I may, I have a few comments and one question. The first comment is when you spoke about the economy, the fastest economic recovery. Let's not forget that we're still fighting inflation. And inflation was mostly created by the supply chain problem we had during COVID, as well as the phenomenal large amount of money printing that the Biden administration did. So we are still fighting the recovery. That's my number one comment. Second comment is regarding long COVID, and you've really demonstrated a great description of long COVID. And I wonder how many of those long COVID people diagnosed is not really caused by the coronavirus, but caused by other viruses. Remember the Epstein-Barr virus, which can cause a lot of symptoms very similar to long COVID, and also what we call the chronic fatigue syndrome, which people don't really know too much about what's causing it, how to cure it. And, you know, I suspect a lot of people who come with chronic fatigue syndrome and, oh, have you had COVID? Oh, yeah, I had COVID 2 years ago. Oh, wow, it's long COVID. So the problem with misdiagnosing or overdiagnosing long COVID is a potential problem. My third comment before my question is regarding Paul. Paul had an interesting question. Do we have persistent viral in our body? My answer is probably yes. We probably have loads of those coronavirus in our system. And the reason why I'm saying that is that if you look at HPV, the herpes virus simplex, it stays in your body for a long time. There was a study I was involved with where people had lost their hearing caused by the virus, and people die 30 years later, and we find particles of the HPV in the inner ear. Is it? I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it's an interesting question, and I would lean towards saying that the virus is still somewhere niche in one of your part of your body. Finally, my question. I apologize for all those comments, but you generated a lot of thoughts here, and that's great. The question is, do you remember in early 2020 when Trump was still around, and he blocked all the airports coming from China and so on. And my question is, do you think that had some good value to do that?
Okay. Let me comment on each of your points, then your question. Total amount of money on COVID relief was more by Trump than Biden. Biden added, and as you see on the recent bill, the enjoyment of spending continues. On the let's see, that was one. On on long COVID, on the assessment, that is your question is at the heart of how people don't know what the persistence is. And of the papers on long COVID treatment, 69% didn't have a control group. I found that astounding because, people improve over time. So how do you know whether the treatment had anything to do or not? And, in the survey, on the surveys,
placebo?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just astounding. On the persistence, there is a test that has been run on people to see if you still have the virus. And if you're interested, send me your email and I can send you a copy of those paper summaries. It's there, it's not in everybody. The border blocking, two things. Trump actually didn't block travel from China. He blocked Chinese coming in, but not infected Americans. Been several studies on the impact of border closings. Bottom line, saved a few days, didn't make a big difference. Now,
thank you.
I'm sorry, where it did make a difference is if you had a country like Australia, New Zealand, or South Korea that really could block the border, then it made a difference. But if you had a country with porous borders, France, Germany, US, didn't make a difference at all.
Paul?
Thank you.
Yeah, again, two questions. First one is really quick. Why the same arm? The other question is, could you explain very briefly how they do gain of function with a virus?
Yeah, ask your first question again, Paul. I missed it.
I thought you said have the vaccination in the same arm.
Oh, yeah. I'll go through the rationale on all the ones I went. Turns out that two things. One, you have the vaccination in the arm. It protects the lower part of the body. The way the vaccination works, it goes into the lymph cells under your armpit. And if it's on the same side, those lymph cells say, I'm ready to do it again. Let me have it. Okay. So it's interesting. And though some of the vaccine makes it to the upper part, we actually have two kinds of networks, and they're loosely connected. The reason for the time of day is the circadian rhythm. Our immune systems are better primed in the middle of the day. Booze, I'll let you figure out for yourself. Just bad idea. Let's see, second question was?
Well, let me quick follow-up on the first question. Do people know that the same arm is important? Do the people in the drugstores know that? Should they be writing down on the form what arm you took it in? Do they do that already?
They do it already. It is pharmacist dependent.
Okay.
So the pharmacist that we like of all things is in Costco. And
Yeah, me too.
this guy's spectacular. The one in Walgreen that we used could barely find my arm, you know.
Okay, the other one
Oh,
was
gain of
more
function.
technical. Yeah, gain of function. What's that?
Okay, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I answer your gain of function question. Go over it again.
Well, just generally speaking, what does that mean? How do they do that?
Okay. They go in and they look at the viral RNA and they say, gee, this is the part of the RNA in the spike protein. The particular part of the spike is S1. Okay, so in S1, I'm going to change this little piece of the RNA. And when I change it, I'm going to see if it binds better or worse.
Mm. So it's genetic engineering on the virus
Yeah.
to make it more potent. Mm.
Right.
Following previous patterns of behavior that they understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And, you know, it's a crapshoot.
Well, yes, thanks very much, Bob, for your production here. It's really production. You went from mild to wild on this thing, from research to practical applications thereof. And I have a couple of questions. I guess number one would be the iodine nasal spray.
Mhm.
Are there clinical trial results on that? Is there a host of anecdotal information? That's number one. Number two, the air purifier you mentioned. You take along or you have them at home or both. Are we talking UV or HEPA or both? And I guess
Okay.
the third is an observation on the observation about your 69% no control. That just, to me, promotes the fact that a placebo could be considered effective. Just the placebo effect would be something that could be observed in one of those trials and skew everything. So why even bother, looking at that kind of a trial for any kind of information? Because you're into random, you know. So again, thanks very much.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And
The iodine.
thanks for the information about the lymph nodes. That's very valuable about knowing that and continuing to go on. And again, that was every 6 months is your recommendation on the boosters for folks like ourselves.
Well,
Thank
a
you.
little bit more. It's every 6 months or triggered by an event.
Right.
So we were going to Africa last month. So we waited a little longer than usual and took it 2 weeks before. So 6 months or an event.
Right.
2 weeks before the event.
Something that would be a known possibility of exposure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So on any of these trips, we're now taking,
Right.
we time it to 2 weeks before
Right.
the trip. Yes, there are papers on this iodine spray back from like 2017, where it was shown to eliminate all viruses in the nose, colds, flu, whatever. Recent COVID papers, that's the one where I got the 8.5 number. And like with everybody else, if you're interested in the paper, send me an email. I'll send you a link.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, the air purifiers, we have HEPA 14.
Mhm.
We've got 2 big ones at our beach house. We've got 2 little ones in the guest house where we spend the winter. And I have a portable one that we take if we're going to go on like a cruise ship, little guy. Then we have a UV light in our air conditioning and heating system. They wipe out all viruses. And, kind of why not?
Do you have a sense for how powerful that UV light is? In other words, the amount of energy required to operate that?
Oh, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's a tiny little light, and you jam it in the air conditioner. Get it on Amazon,
Mhm.
Honeywell. and you or your AC guy can stick it in.
Sure.
I found the 69% no control group astounding. From two viewpoints. Why would somebody publish, in my view, a piece of crap? And secondly, why would a journal publish it? I don't get it.
Clicks, eyeballs, whatever.
Oh yeah, the eyeball. Once I started writing these papers, I'm up to journal 62 that has sent me a notice. Oh, would you please publish in our journal? And by the way, we'll charge you $5,000 to do so.
Arturo Roberts?
Yes, good morning. Thanks for an interesting presentation. My question is inspired by the fact that I am from Patagonia.
Oh,
That there inspired by a scientific reason.
I'm sorry, Arturo, say it again.
Let me. Was your trip to Patagonia inspired by a scientific reason?
No. My daughter, younger daughter, lived in Argentina for 9 months. Of all things, she went there, no job, no friend, one friend, no apartment. 2 weeks later, she conned her present husband to come to join her. So we visited a couple of times. And we went to Zhao Zhao, loved it. We then went on a cruise and saw Patagonia from a distance. And we wanted to see Torre del Paine. That was my wife helping downstairs. And so we took a trip, which we loved. And, went to Torre del Paine, went to the glacier, went to another place, stayed at a lodge called Explora, overlooking Torre del Paine. Had a wonderful time. You're lucky to have been raised there. Great area.
Alberto?
Yes, thank you very much, Bob, for this fantastic presentation. I was intrigued about the use of the convalescent plasma. If it's still, a good solution for some people, or even gamma globulin that was also being tried in several trials. So what can you tell us about that?
It was one of the earliest therapeutics after tremendous lobbying by one individual. Early on, it appeared to be very promising. The subsequent paper on its effectiveness, it's dropped quite a bit. And I wouldn't use it as compared to the other ones. Paxlovid first if you can. Some people can't because of the drug interactions. Then the other pill, and then finally the shot. It's a very interesting idea.
Paul?
Yeah, I guess we're nearly concluding here. So let me ask you, Bob, after your last presentation, you invited old guardians to sign up for your newsletter that you send out quite regularly. And I didn't do that, unfortunately. I know I wouldn't have time to read, but because I'm pretty busy with other stuff, mostly for Old Guard, whatever. But anyway, is that invitation still open? Do you still do that? Is it?
I still do it.
I assume you don't mind having Old Guard people just send you random questions about things. You like to respond to people. So tell us the story.
Yeah. Now every 2 weeks, issue number 114 went out, a few days ago. I sent out about a 8 to 12 page update. I try to make it non-scientific, try to get to the bottom line. Same introduction every time. What's the status of the virus and vaccines? And it goes out to a few hundred people. So I just have an email list, Bob Martin 08008 @mac.com. I'm happy to put you on, happy to take you off.
Thanks, Bob. I'll mention that in next week's blast email.
Yeah, okay. My guess is if this winter is as mild as we all hope it will be, but that is one trigger. The second, as I said, I'm working on my last paper on long COVID treatment. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to go on to a different hobby at the beginning of next year.
Yeah.
And I certainly hope for all of our cases, that'll be the sense. If anybody wants past issues, I have documents that summarize the past issues.
Thanks.
Like I said, weird hobby.
Any other further questions? Mitch, you gonna do the presentation?
Sure. Thanks, Bob, and thanks all you guys for a bunch of great questions. This was very interactive and very informative, and we all got some thinking to do about our lifestyles and our habits and what we do, and which nasal spray to buy on Amazon, all kind of stuff like that. So thanks, Bob. You pretty much know the drill. Joel's going to put up the certificate, and we'll get you that in the mail. But the general gist is that we appreciate your making this presentation. And then if we were in the room, we'd all do the old guard salute by standing up and all that kind of stuff, which I don't know, there might be 2 or 3 of us that want to stand up now. I'd go ahead. But the general gist is thank you very much. And so